Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is the founder of Gear Sharing. He is also the handler of partnerships with Class Pass. Today's guest is Reed Clanahan. Reed, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Awesome. Good to be here.
For sure. So Reed, we're just going to jump right into things. I've got 4 questions that I like to ask all of my guests. I kind of like to call these the warm-up questions just to get the conversational ball rolling, so to speak. The first question that I have for you is, how do you start your day? Do you have a specific morning routine or morning ritual that you like to stick to on most mornings?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm very, very routine. I pretty much do it the same way every single morning. No surprise there in the fitness space. I'm sure many people can relate to that. But yeah, so as soon as I wake up, I'm walking to start the coffee maker. The coffee maker's running. About that time, I'm drinking about 12 ounces of water. From that time, coffee's about ready. I go and I'll sit and meditate for about half an hour. It depends on. I'm sure everybody can relate to this. There's always some of those days where you're spending 45 minutes or an hour really taking that extra time for yourself. So what I'm doing when I'm meditating is obviously, like I said, focusing on my breath, setting my intent for the day, maybe visualizing what it is that I'm here to work on and create in the world, whatever it might be. And that's a big part of my my meditation. And then from there, depending upon the day, if there's sales meetings or whatever it might be, usually right after that, I'm driving to the gym. Going to work out with weights first thing in the morning, really getting the energy up and kind of getting into my day, if you will.
Perfect. All right, so let's touch on kind of like what you do for movement or working out. And we're going to get into gear sharing. We're going to get into kind of like everything that you've got going on in terms of kind of like fitness and business and things like that. But what type of movement or what type of exercise, Reed, do you specifically prefer or like to do most often?
Yeah, so my bread and butter for forever, and I definitely say it's taken different forms over time. My bread and butter forever has always been lifting weights. I'm not necessarily as rigid as I used to be with reps, sets, weights, linear periodization, all of that good stuff. But I do have basically weights are my kind of foundation, and then as you said, I handle partnerships for ClassPass, and so I literally get 200 ClassPass credits every single month. So I'm going and I'm trying out something that maybe is more yoga based, where I'm actually actively getting into stretching and things like that, or I'm dropping into something that is a little bit more cardio based that I would normally do with just weight training or something like that. So I try to have a decent combination of all of the kind of different elements. That being said, I'm always constantly, and this is a little bit probably more of a long-winded explanation for this, but I'm always constantly focused on how do I get out of the bubble that I'm moving in every single day, right? So meaning that, if we're driving in one direction, we're sitting and we're weight training, we're on a treadmill, whatever, it's like we're only moving in the sagittal plane of motion. So how do we focus on just opening up those planes of motion that we're moving into? And so, just because I'm weight training doesn't mean that I'm only doing weight training, stretching. I'm really focused on, I feel like overall it's like I'm focused on getting my energy up for the day, because working out for me is shifted into less about how do my abs look today and more about how does the energy that I'm getting from this serve me in what I'm doing in the world.
Beautiful. All right, so the next question is a part of the conversational warm-up questions. Read favorite book or book that you like to gift often.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book that I'd say I'd probably most recommend is it's called The One Thing by Gary Keller, and I'm sure you probably heard that listed before. Reason that I like to recommend that one is because in a world that we are constantly inundated with information and likes and social media and all of that stuff, it seems to always be kind of the one focusing book that I can go back up and brush against. Meaning that we have all the information. There's a really great saying. It's like if more information was the answer, we all have six-pack abs and be filthy rich, right? And so a lot of times it has to do more with like what direction are we really focused on moving into for that day. And one last piece, and I'll kind of bring this part to a close. But basically. The one thing, like I said, ultimately it's the ultimate focusing book, and I want to give your listeners one kind of value piece from that is it's called the focusing question. The focusing question, you hear it in this book, you'll hear it in Tim Ferriss's information for any of you that are familiar with Tim Ferriss, or a few others, I'm sure. But basically, the focusing question is what is the one thing such that by doing it, everything else will be made easier or unnecessary. And I'll repeat it again because it's one you kind of got to wrap your head around, but it's like, what is the one thing such that by doing it, everything else is made easier or unnecessary? It's a great question to meditate on. It's a good question to think about when you're thinking about your 5, 10, 15-year goals and kind of working those backwards. But it's like, of all the things that we have to do every day, it's like, how do you eliminate distraction and really get focused on what's most important?
That's good stuff, my man. The one thing. I love it. So let's. I want to get more in depth with how you read specifically, personally. How have you gone about in your own personal life, your own journey here within life? How have you gone through that process of finding your one thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as far as the one thing to be focused on overall, I think it has to do with tying that to whatever your why is, specifically on why it is that you're doing what you're doing. And for me, I'm ultimately focused on who am I doing that for too? And so my kind of big part of my why is how do I add the most value to fitness business owners, essentially, and that's kind of the name of the game for me. And my why is tied around that because I was a trainer for 10 years. I think you'll hear maybe more about this later. I used to manage the largest collegiate small group training program at the University of Florida. And that being said, there's when you're getting into business and you're starting something that you can really see yourself not just interested in for a while, but passionate about, it's focusing on how can I scratch my own itch. And I think that's a big part of what kind of drove me to do what I'm doing now.
Cool. The next question that I have for you, Reed, favorite quote, mantra, or word?
Favorite quote, mantra, or word? Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is from Nietzsche. He who has a why can bear any how.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So, is it fair to say then, kind of with you, Reed, everything starts with your personal why? Is that kind of the center of kind of your existence is your personal why?
100%, and it goes from, and I'm sure everyone's heard of the Simon Sinek talk, but he wasn't the first person to obviously talk about why it is what we do, but it goes from our why to basically our why to how to what, and it's why you do what you do, it's how becomes just inevitable and just a matter of mechanics, and then what you do just becomes kind of a manifestation out of that. So I think everything originates from that, and it's definitely kind of my guiding North Star, if you will, kind of working that backwards.
Okay, so the whole your why and things like that, that's it's like buzzwords, when you get on social media and you start following influencers or people in the fitness community or entrepreneurship. It's you got to find your why or whatever. And for some of us that kind of understand what sets our soul on fire, what lights us up, what we're passionate about, I think it's pretty simple and pretty easy. You kind of take that passion, and that's probably in some sort of alignment with your why and all that. But I've talked to a lot of people that have no clue what they're passionate about. They have no clue, in terms of like, what sets their soul on fire, or what they love. And it's just like a lot of people read, and I know this. We live in a very special community here in the Denver area and surrounding, because there's so many, like we said before we turn on the mic, like-minded people. There's so many people that are passionate about fitness, so passionate about entrepreneurship. They're passionate about the outdoors. They're passionate about the mountains. So we've got it pretty good in terms of like just the community out where we live, right? In terms of kind of like knowing your why and all that. But when you step outside of kind of like a bubble like Denver, there's again a lot of people that are kind of just like going through the motions. They don't have a why. They don't know what their passion is. They're just trying to pay the bills. They're just kind of in that treadmill of life, so to speak, right? They're on the grind. They're just trying to make ends meet, all that. So for two dudes like us that know our why and we're passionate and we're going for it and all that, right? That's great, but how can somebody that's listening to this, or somebody that maybe we come in contact with that doesn't know their why and all that, how can we kind of help the listeners, or how can we help people again that we might come in contact with in the future kind of understand what their why is or what they're passionate about? Is there like maybe some steps, or maybe just some thoughts that we can maybe conjure up and help them work through to kind of figure out what their why is or what they're passionate about?
Absolutely. That's very well said, and something that I've actually been thinking about recently too. And so I definitely have a few thoughts that I hope will be useful to your listeners overall. The first thing that I would say, and this is going to take a couple of different forms, so really hang with me here.
For sure, yeah.
But basically, the first thing that I would say is you got to try a lot of things to know what you like and what you don't like. So like by putting yourself out there. So I understand the essence of wanting to find what you're passionate about and then move forward, but I would actually challenge that to say it's like you need to be in the act of putting yourself out there, showing up to the event, meeting the next person, even if you're not really exactly sure what that is yet. But those that consistently show up are the ones that figure it out. And showing up every day is I would say like the biggest piece of that, because like once you're able to do that, come in alignment with showing up, putting yourself out there. I mean, I know you put yourself in so many situations. I hear people talk about you in different circles, and it's just like you said. We're in Denver. We're in this this bubble where things just continue to happen. But I would actually challenge part of that and just say like wherever you're at, it's like you can connect with whoever is in your immediate sphere right around you, and maybe you don't see anything come of that today or tomorrow, but continuing to show up is what's ultimately going to help you at least move in the direction of. And so that would be the first piece that I would say. Try a lot of things, be in different spaces, make yourself available. The best availability is being available. I think I butchered that quote. But
no, that's okay. Availability, or being, what is it? Availability.
The best ability is availability.
There we go. Okay, I think we got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know what you mean. I'm sure the listeners got you too. So.
For sure. And so the other piece of that I kind of wanted to go into to really kind of help this come full circle is if you don't know what you're fully passionate about yet and what your why is, that's okay. That doesn't mean that it's an excuse to act. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be continuing to put ourselves out there. Like I said. That being said, if you don't know what your why is just yet, the one thing that I would employ to you is that it's all fine to think that you're going to be passionate about something because you found your why. At the same time, I think that in society right now we kind of have this elusive idea that we're chasing happiness, and if happiness is kind of the overarching idea of what we're chasing, that's fleeting. That's hard. You can't. I mean, once you have it, it's gone. Right? It's just a feeling. It's a state of being. Things like that. What I would encourage people to go more towards is purpose, and whether you are trying to get out of credit card debt, taking care of someone that is sick, and you just don't even know how you'd have the time to go and pursue your passion. You're in pain. You're dealing with something. People find great meaning in challenges, suffering, things like that. Not to go totally dark with that, but basically I want to basically just challenge kind of the notion that I feel like social media, you have to only do things in a certain way in order to be happy, but to take happiness a step further, like I said, it's more meaningful to find what you're something that you find purpose in, and that can sound trite. That being said, it's like when I'm sure that everyone's gone through something like this. I've gone through like health conditions in my life where it's like life wasn't meaningless at the time. It was just a matter of what I was doing, and you find purpose in those things. And I think that purpose is ultimately kind of the thing that can actually keep you disciplined on your daily grind, rather than just like I have to be happy all the time, which I am, you are, we work out, like we get endorphins and things like that. You can put yourself into a peak state without feeling like you have to be happy all the time necessarily. But yeah, so that's a long-winded way of saying if you don't know your why yet, you do have purpose in what you're doing. What you're doing on in this world matters, and continue to lean into that. Try new things, see what you like, see what you don't like, and you'll figure it out.
Very, very well put. And something else too, just to kind of add on that as I age and go through my life, like I think a lot of people, and again, this comes from there's a lot of stuff on social media, and we see all these highlight reels of people's lives, right, through mostly social media. But also I think it's important for us in terms of why and purpose and passion, all that, like sometimes like the purpose and the passion and the why and all that, maybe it's not going to be like your main source of income, right? Is that fair to say? I think that's something that I've kind of like got caught up in times, because like, dude, like I'm super passionate about podcasting. Guess what? I'm spending money, to produce the podcast. Like I haven't made a penny from my podcast, but I'm very passionate about it. I'm very passionate about sitting across the table from another human being and looking in their eyes and having conversation and listening to them and all that. But again, I'm not making any money. So I think within that, trying a lot of things, consistently showing up, finding your purpose and everything that you outlined very eloquently, Reed. I think it's also important for us sitting here just to make sure the listeners understand like that passion and that purpose and all that. It again may not be your main source of income. It might not pay you anything. It might cost you money, but that still might be your purpose. That might be your passion. That might be why you're here on this earth. So just kind of separating ourselves from like a job or a career, and then passion, purpose, and all that. Because a lot of people on social media, these influencers and all this stuff, they're going to say like once you find your passion, you're never going to work another day in your life or whatever, right? And I get all that, but just again, I think a lot of times we connect purpose and passion and why and all that to like job, career, and money. So I just want for my own clarity, but also for my listeners' clarity, just to understand that might not always be tied together. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Very, very well said. It may not be your source of income now, tomorrow, or the next day, but maybe it could in the future. And Jim Rohn has a really great quote. Jim Rohn, I don't want to butcher another quote here, but Jim Rohn basically says, you may have value, in the eyes of your family, in the eyes of your community, in the eyes of God, if that's what you believe in, kind of thing. But that being said, basically what we get paid for in the marketplace is essentially the value that we bring to the marketplace. And so that being said, it's like it doesn't happen overnight. Your value right now as a person listening to this, passionate about something, trying to figure out how to make ends meet, or just trying to get to that next level, it doesn't have to do solely with like your purpose as a human being. And in conjunction with that, it's really important to, like you and I are very similar in this way. We have a diversified identity. Part of us is working out and doing something. Part of us is, meeting somebody. Maybe there's different social groups that we're involved in. And so that being said, if your business doesn't take off right away, or it's just like you're on a trajectory of, or whatever that timing really looks like, you can diversify your identity and things that are meaningful to you, that are ultimately moving you in the direction of. And that being said, with it, like in pursuit of those things, it's like I think it's important to remember that what we're really chasing is that feeling, right? So like, let's say that somebody is just won an Olympic World Trials, and they've been training for 6 years. They've been waiting for another 4 or whatever for it to come up. They finally hit that moment, and it's ecstasy for a little while. And then after that, a lot of times things like that, or people that are finishing their PhDs, or people that are just, they had all this build up of something they were working on. They were chasing that moment, and then again, it's elusive. It's fleeting. And so ultimately, I think that it's important to remember that feeling of, and this is why I like visualization, for example, is such a great tool. Ultimately, what we're chasing is that ultimate feeling of what we feel like when we're satisfied as a job well done, of kind of being that ideal person of ourselves. And what I would like to challenge listeners to is, you can experience that now. You can become that now. You can kind of step into what that feels like now through visualization, through journaling, through any of these things. If you're able to harness that feeling now, you're going to have a much easier time closing the gap, right? The gap of my ideal self that's way out in the distance, and where I'm at right now. If you're able to harness, the feeling of feeling abundant right now, the feeling of feeling satisfied right now, of having all people in your community supporting and cheering on whatever it is you're doing, that final version of you, that's always going to be a someday, when I get there kind of thing. And so I think harnessing the feeling of where we're at now not only helps us to move in the direction of, but it also helps us to attract the things into our lives to make that actually possible, because it's no longer just about us talking and trying to act a certain way. We become that thing, and we start being in a state of being that, and that's when you really see things start to attract into your life. So that's a long-winded way of answering that, but I hope that was useful.
It was good. It's good. You have a great way of putting things and explaining them very simply. So the last question, Reed, as a part of kind of like, again, the warm up here, do you have a favorite or most listened to podcast? And if you're not necessarily in a podcast that much, maybe there's somebody on YouTube, maybe there's somebody on Instagram or social media that you kind of just respect their message or appreciate listening to their message.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned you a little earlier, the Tim Ferriss podcast. I get a lot of value out of because it's like, where else could you get access to that level of information? And Tim Ferriss is just one of those folks that goes really deep into a subject, and so it's like you can feel like you kind of are able to explore those things without having to spend years and years researching something, right? He has a book that's called Tools of Titans, where he basically takes all of those different pieces of information and consolidates them. It's a fantastic coffee table book if you need one that's a good conversation starter. So
cool.
Yeah.
Very well, good. Okay, so we're gonna kind of just jump into your backstory right now, Reed. So if you don't mind sharing with myself and the 127 Fit podcast listeners, where did you grow up? What did those younger years look like? Were you involved in sports? Were you involved in extracurricular activities? Do you have any siblings? Kind of just paint that picture for us again, if you don't mind, of the childhood and kind of like what those younger years look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So I was actually born in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So home of the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Born and raised there for the first 23 years of life. And two siblings, a brother and a sister. I'm the youngest and the baby of the family, and I would definitely say that I rightfully so taking the baby of the family position. And but that being said, let's see. I have a great relationship even today with my parents. very, very close with both of them. And I mean, I talk to them maybe every other day, if not every day. Just, hey, how's it going? You know, just kind of checking in, kind of thing. And so yeah, I mean, I feel like I was very, very blessed to grow up in a household that was. We went to church. It's very, very traditional as far as kind of the standard what you would think of when you think of Oklahoma upbringing, right? That being said, after let's see, I ended up going to school there for my undergrad at Oklahoma State, exercise science degree there. That was when I started personal training, and so let's see, I don't want to skip ahead here, but. I grew up wrestling. I grew up wrestling for 11 years, and fitness was just a means to an end of training for sports, right? And so I wrestled in, like I said, in Stillwater, Oklahoma, which is like one of the meccas for college, collegiate wrestling as far as like NCAA titles are concerned. And so I just got my ass whooped basically in training and physical performance for the first 10 years of my sports life. And then after that I was really starting to get into weightlifting, started powerlifting. I was eating everything in sight going into my later years in high school and everything, and then kind of fast forward to where I was before. Basically for the next 4 years I was at Oklahoma State in a fraternity called SIGEP, and that was where I really started kind of my own personal and professional development. Was in those first 4 years. I had a couple of great mentors that really took me under their wing and said, hey, go to this conference, hey, meet this person, hey, do this whatever next type of thing, and I continued to say yes to all of those things, and that landed me at the University of Florida. A few years later, I went on to manage the largest collegiate small group training program in the country, which had, let's see, like 12 different fitness formats, everything from different types of yoga to cross training to the kinesis wall, power plates, all sorts of stuff within that. And fast forward to where I'm at now. I've worked a couple of different sales jobs. I've always worked on gear sharing on the side, and it's always been kind of like we were talking about. Not everybody's going to have the time or the energy or the resources to actually do it, but it doesn't mean that you can't still keep it alive in some sort of way.
For sure.
And then so yeah, I've always worked on it on the side, and then fast forward to where we're at now. Like you mentioned, I've been in Denver for, let's see, about 2.5 years now. I handle partnerships for ClassPass, so as you can imagine, all those different types of fitness formats, different settings I've worked in. I've worked in commercial, I've worked in recreational, I've worked in university setting, and I've seen a lot when it comes to what's coming and going, and so now it's like I get to try out all these different types of fitness. I get to meet fitness instructors, studio owners, all of that, which has been a huge blessing, because obviously I get to help ClassPass continue to grow and expand, but I also get to work with a lot of those folks to help them do really cool experiential pop-up events. And so I'm sure we'll dive into a couple elements of that later, but I'll close that one out.
Yep. So we're gonna take a couple steps back here. Go back to your childhood just for a moment here, and then we'll catapult forward. So you growing up, you grew up kind of in the Bible Belt. I'm sure you grew up in a pretty pretty conservative home. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the Bible Belt, grew up in a conservative home, so I get all that. Now, did you spend a lot of time outside? Kind of what was like? I know you said you got into wrestling, and that was a big part of the childhood and the upbringing. But did you spend a lot of time outside with your siblings? I mean, kind of like paint that picture a little bit, because a lot of people that end up out here in Colorado, us transplants, and I've had so many people on the podcast, they're like, we start digging in their childhood, and it's like they kind of had that free range life. A lot of them, they were outside, they were always exploring things like that. Was that kind of a part of that childhood as well for you, Reed?
Yeah. There was always like a park or a lake or something that was close to my house. So even before I could drive, I was there. I was fishing pole in hand.
Yeah.
And that was a big part of my childhood for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically Colorado was always kind of a destination place. It's like where we vacations, right?
Okay, cool.
And so
yeah.
think about skiing or camping or something like that. It was more of like a summer kind of excursion. Whereas I'm sure you can relate to this coming from Iowa, you said.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When it's cold, it's really freaking cold. And
That's
when
correct.
it's hot, it's really freaking hot.
Right. Yep. For sure.
Whereas we can be sitting here in Denver and it can be technically 40, 50, 60 degrees and the sun's out and it's beautiful and
Absolutely.
you just want to be outside.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I hope that answers your question there.
Yep, it does. Now, I want to touch on kind of like your relationship with your parents because, again, for me personally, I have an awesome relationship with my parents. My mom's my best friend. I talk to her every day, most days, sometimes twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. But anyways, so many conversations I've had with people on the podcast and, being a public educator the last couple of years and just being around kids a lot, in my 20s and things like that, the childhood and the upbringing is such an important part of who we become as adults, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of just talk a little bit, Reed, more about, your relationship with your parents. Obviously, it's a great relationship. You said you talk to them almost every day, if not every day, now as an adult. But, let's touch on maybe like what's a value or two, or what's 1 or 2 things that you kind of look back on your childhood in terms of your parents that you feel like they really did an awesome job in instilling in you and your siblings. That's something, again, like values, or maybe it was something your dad said all the time, or just whatever it was. Maybe it was just their example. But what are some things that they've instilled in you as a child that really hold true and you really hold true to now in adulthood?
That's a great question, and actually something that I had spoken with my dad about literally yesterday. Even like, and this will come full circle here as far as like why this is valuable. Is like, even if you're just going through the shitstorm of life and there's just stuff hitting you in the face all of the time, challenges, things like that. One of the biggest things that my dad instilled in me, and I didn't really know it at the time at all. That has been super valuable. Is always coming back to your story, what you're about, and I can't emphasize that enough, because if you really actually dive in and take the time to define whatever it is your story, that's how we actually give context to what we're experiencing in our everyday life. Tony Robbins has a great training program that basically talks about your story determines your state, and your state determines your strategy. It's like if you're in a messed up state and the worst things of life have hit you in the face and you're feeling depressed and down, that is not a time that you want to actually move forward with making any real decisions about your actual life. Where you want to actually do that is where you're connected to your story, you know why you're doing what you're doing. That obviously puts you in a physical and mental state in order to actually make the best decisions for whatever it is you're doing. So long-winded way of saying, like, my dad, without me even knowing it, think about interviewing for your first job, think about going on a date, think about any of those things. You need a certain level of confidence, and your confidence is going to come from what is that story that you're telling yourself every day.
Yep, that's powerful. That's very powerful. Okay, so you mentioned a little bit about college. So you studied exercise science at Oklahoma State. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, and then you moved on and got your master's degree at the University of Florida. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned kind of when you were unpacking your childhood a little bit, you talked about how, fitness and exercise was kind of like just tied into wrestling, right? And kind of like sports and stuff like that. So you decided, like myself, to study exercise science for your undergraduate. What was kind of like the impetus, or kind of like why did you choose, towards the end of high school, in terms of studying exercise science? Did kind of like fitness become a bigger part in high school, or what was kind of the mindset going into college to study, again, exercise science and just leap into fitness like that?
Yeah, that's a greght question. And if you think about it, it kind of goes back to like, didn't really know what it was I wanted to do because I was still figuring out my why. You're coming out of high school and stuff. I had already actually worked at a gym since I was like 16.
Oh, cool.
And started personal training towards the tail end of that. They actually, I was working at a gym that wasn't tied with the university, and my mentor, as I was telling you earlier, actually pulled me out of there and said, hey, I'm going to give you way more clients and this and that.
Awesome.
And I said, great, sign me up.
Yeah.
And so I already, I had a job that was paying more than most people that I knew out of high school, and that was tied to the university, and that was really the reason I kind of went with that, because going back to like, okay, I didn't really know I knew what my why was, or like what I was interested in, but I hadn't really defined my why at that point. And so yeah, it was a matter of taking what I was interested in and showing up, doing the next right thing, kind of thing. So kind of ties back to our earlier.
Okay, so now let's touch on mentors, because that's something else that's kind of just like buzzwords in social media, and you get into personal development and self-help and all that, but it's invaluable, right? And you've brought up, I mean, I think you would probably consider Reed like your own parents on some level as mentors, but kind of stepping outside of like the parents and maybe close family. For you, it sounds like there was a mentor or some mentors along your journey that had a very profound impact, in terms of your life and kind of the direction you took your life. So just if you even want to mention by name, but just maybe talk about, the mentors in your life, and then why is it important for all of us to have some sort of mentorship in our lives, or if you want to maybe even say coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So in coaching, all these things can take so many different forms for us now, right? Like obviously, if you like anybody listening to this wants a mentor or a coach, I mean, there's so many great people that are putting out content online, where it's like you can at least absorb some of that information. For me, and I want to kind of back up kind of a couple steps. For me, as far as a mentorship goes, it wasn't that I was going out seeking a mentor. Right. How many of us are like, I'm sure people are like, hey, let's go to coffee so I can pick your brain. You're like, okay, what are we doing here? Kind of thing. Whereas I think that when they can naturally happen with like whatever it is that you're doing, I think that's a great route to take. And to take that a step further, I would say that everyone's heard this. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I would say that mentorship is valuable, but how can we? And this is something I do like voluntarily for myself. I'm sure many people do this, but I instill this regular cadence of accountability. So that kind of goes into coaching a bit, where it's like I feel like many of my closest friends, I coach them on certain subjects, they coach me. And it's like we meet every so often. Did you do the same? Did you do the things that you said you were going to do? Right. If you didn't, why not? And why can I basically give that person permission just to ring you a new one?
Right. For sure. Yeah.
And so to kind of bring that to a close, like I think that mentorship can be very, very, very valuable if it's the right situation. If you're just seeking out somebody that probably doesn't have time and trying to, basically you got to be careful about kind of how you navigate some of those.
For sure, yeah.
It doesn't mean that you can't find those people naturally or set up in an environment where it's like people you surround yourself with are those people that are better in certain areas that you are those people that are keeping you accountable in some way or connected in some way or bring something to the table in some way. And I think that, and this, I think you see this in the fitness space too, where it's like everybody is becoming so much more interested in collaborating. And it's like, that's what I feel like the group of people that I surround myself with is like, okay, like, here's what I can do. How can here's how I can help you based upon what you told me last time and this and that. If everybody does that and nobody comes out being what I call like an ask hole, you're just asking for things. But you come to a community, a situation, a relationship, saying, hey, this is what I'm about, and I'm looking to contribute, kind of thing. It's like you're never going to go wrong continuing to put that good out into the universe, if that makes sense. So.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I want to touch on, your time at the University of Florida. Remind me, what did you end up studying at the University of Florida?
Entrepreneurship.
Oh, okay. So
their MBA program.
okay, awesome, beautiful, beautiful. Now, you talked about being a part of this, this really big fitness community at the University of Florida. That's why I want you to kind of refresh my memory. I want you to go in a little bit more in depth with kind of like what you oversaw and what you were a part of at the University of Florida. Just kind of explain a little bit more, and what did that do for you in terms of kind of like your entrepreneurship, and you're wanting to kind of get into fitness entrepreneurship. What was that experience at the University of Florida? Not necessarily the studies, but this. You are part of this, overseeing this fitness thing. So kind of touch on that a little bit.
Yeah. This may actually, I'll bring it full circle, but this may actually go slightly in a direction you weren't quite expecting.
Perfect.
As soon as
that's perfect.
I had a really interesting start to my my time at the University of Florida. I was coming off of an internship in Colorado, which is one of the reasons I ended up coming out here. But on the way to Florida, I don't even know, 16-hour drive or whatever it was, I developed something called Guillain-Barré syndrome. And, like I was saying before, everything for me was, all about lifting heavy weights, eating as much as I can, reps, sets, weights, all of that stuff. And literally overnight, it's like my body was breaking down, my joints locked up from the waist down. Over the next few weeks, I lost about 60 pounds.
Wow.
I was 220, I was down to 160.
Ooh.
And I couldn't walk, like I said, more than 2.5 miles an hour. This is all while I'm trying to start managing, a number of different coaches that all have their own specialties and things like that. I remember walking to class and people stopping off the side of the road, stopping by, walking up and saying, "Hey, can I, do you need help, getting home?" That's how bad it looked whenever I was moving.
Wow.
Yeah. So fast forward, $6,000 of blood work done later. Me throughout a semester managing it and trying to teach Olympic lifting at the time when I couldn't hardly function.
Yeah.
It was a humbling experience, to say the least. And so you take a guy that had found a lot of his confidence and identity in his body and working out and the way he looked, things like that. You take that, and that guy can't walk anymore, very well at least. It went from me focusing on powerlifting and working out really hard every day to just me getting up in the morning and getting my joints moving through yoga. And that's when I really started meditating. That's when I really started focusing on healing my body, because nothing else was really working with just the way that I was kind of putting that out there in the world. And that is one of the biggest things that I think really helped me develop a sense of gratitude for, now it's there's a lot of fitness formats I might not go do. They're just not really my thing. But I have such an appreciation for how people find and come into contact with whatever it is that strikes them. And I've always told people that the best type of workout you can do is one that you enjoy, because you'll do it consistently.
Absolutely.
It's whatever you're doing consistently is whatever's going to work for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the start of me starting at Florida. So very humbling experience. I had, I think at the most, I think highest point I had 9 or 10 coaches. All with different specialties, all with different certifications. They were required to have that specific certification for whatever it was that they were teaching. So think about Viper, think about the kinesis wall, that is. Think about the power plate, think about functional training, whatever it might be. And basically, what I was doing there was continue to help those coaches develop, managing their schedules. Making sure people were in the right place at the right time, trying new different types of formats. I'll give you one actually for an example that's pretty popular now. Aerial yoga is just becoming very, very popular, which is kind of like yoga with a silk that hangs from the ceiling. You're kind of using it as an assistive prop kind of thing. Became very, very popular on the coast at that time, and then I just saw it work its way into the middle of the country after that. But yeah, literally bursting at the seams, didn't hardly have enough space to teach it. And so doing very, very well. And that's just one of, a few formats, but one that definitely surprised me overall. But yeah, to answer your earlier question, I in the entrepreneurship program there, which was immensely valuable because they didn't just say, "Hey, study this and congratulations, are an entrepreneur." It was like you're going to spend half your time, studying like inside of, the classroom, working on business plans. The other half the time, we want you working on. Doesn't have to be your own venture. We'd rather it be your own venture, but you'd be working on a business of some sort. And so there were a couple of different businesses I got to work on throughout that time. And as you can imagine, going to school, managing that program, working out, and all of that, it's a really, really busy time. And so that's when I really kind of learned to get very structured, I would say, in my days and how I was using my time.
Perfect. Now, let's transition into post college, then post master's degree and things like that. What did life look like for you, Reed, after you got your master's degree?
Yeah, great question. So I moved around a bit, different sales jobs, always working on my passion on the side and everything. I worked for a medical device sales company. I came out to Colorado. I was in real estate for a little while, and both of those things were fine in a way to make money, but not anything that fired me up that I wanted to be doing for every day.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so when did gear sharing kind of come to be? Was that something that happened while you were getting your master's degree? Was that while you were doing the sales or the real estate? And then after you answer that, what is gear sharing? And just kind of let's dive into that a little bit more in depth.
For sure. So gear sharing, the actual anchoring system, the only piece that we actually manufacture all of this concept, which I'll get into in a moment. I started when I was at the University of Florida, so it was not at all anything that I'm working on now, but it's like that just goes back to what we were saying before. Just continue to do the next right thing and act in the direction of. It's like things will continue the world tends to work its way around whatever you aim at, and so
perfect.
you'll continue to figure it out. So literally, this is what I've been working on is 4 years in the making. Which I mean that's for something to take that long, it's like that's something you have to not just be passionate about and excited about once, but every day. So
right.
To dive into what you were saying, asking about what is gear sharing. So can I give you an idea of what we're up to in Colorado now and where it's at now? Basically, gear sharing takes all of the gear that you normally see in a small group style functional fitness studio. We've simplified and modified that, replacing it in these boxes. I'm working with Atlas real estate groups, some co-working spaces that are offset from parks, to basically put these boxes out there so that fitness studios, independent contracting trainers, anybody can go and actually do a badass experiential pop-up event. The idea is that we want to take whatever the normal in-studio experience is and allow people to actually provide that in a badass ambiance, whether it's with a mountain view, a lake in the background. There's a brewery that once you finish your workout, that's opening up. Everyone grab a beer and socialize after. It's all about how can we make it more experiential, because if there's one thing that I learned as a trainer, there's one thing that I learned at the University of Florida. Any of those types of things have prepared me for is that understanding that people come back to an experience. They don't just come back to a workout, right? So if you're putting on an experience for your client, that's what's going to keep people coming back. And so at the end of the day, we put a bunch of gear in a box and we help facilitate these things between the brand and the venue space. But at the same time, we understand it and realize that what we're selling to people is experiences overall.
Perfect. Okay, now let's touch on you just kind of said we're selling an experience, right? And then you talked about in the past you were actually in sales and just to make money or whatever. I'm as I've studied different people and listened to different people on podcasts, and I'm learning more and more. I'm a firm believer that life is sales, right? Like, again, like you referred to, like, you know, going on a date earlier. Like, you go on a date, like you're trying to sell, right? If you're going into a job interview, you're trying to sell. Like, you know, some people might not like, you know, that point of view, but to me, it really makes sense, right? So in terms of not necessarily sales, but just in terms of like connecting with people, you know, and building a community and getting people to kind of come along and follow along and you know, jump on board whatever you're doing. Like, what are some I don't want to say tips, but what are maybe just some ways that you really try to better connect, read yourself personally with other people? Like, you know, for me, I've learned like listening is so valuable. It's so important when you're wanting to connect with another human being, when you're wanting to get to know somebody. Listen to them, ask them questions. When you ask questions, when you ask better questions, you're going to get answers. You're going to get better answers and things like that. So what are some things when you're trying to connect with people? Maybe when you're showing up at a new event, or you're going out and just hanging out with some friends, something like that, socializing. What are some ways that you try to, like, put yourself out there in the sense of trying to connect with people and build that rapport, build those relationships?
Phenomenal. Thank you for the setup, because I'm a big proponent for sales, and I'll start there and kind of work my way into the rest of that, because it all does tie together, and I totally see how that's connected. So as far as sales goes in general, what I've found is people buy for their reasons and not for yours, and so that goes into what you're talking about with listening, and the reason that I say people buy for their reasons, because think about this. You know, I'm sure you have many personal trainers or group instructors like that listen to this podcast. Maybe they're starting their business or whatever it might be. They don't care about exercise science. They just don't. Your clients don't care about it, not yours, but the personal trainer that I'm talking to through this microphone right now, your clients, they only care about exercise science to the extent that it makes their ass look nice.
Absolutely.
Right? And so basically helping people, and that goes back to the whole sales thing. I think that, you know, whether I'm selling somebody on why they should do a squat, whether I'm selling someone on why they should, you know, work with ClassPass, or I'm selling someone on why they should do a pop-up event or whatever, I don't necessarily view it as sales now as much, because I just feel like I'm just living my life. It's just integrated into who I am and what I'm excited about talking about every day, and I get to go talk to people every day.
Right, absolutely.
And so, but that didn't come without, like, first learning in sales to make it about that other person. Like, so we're going into a sales conversation. I want to talk to you about your reasons for moving X, Y, and Z direction. Of course, I'm going to ask certain questions as far as helping you along that process. And if I've done my job correctly, I have transferred the emotional state that I'm feeling. So I'm excited about whatever it is that I'm selling, but I've also disconnected from it. And this is where, and I want to kind of circle to what you were talking about here, I've also disconnected from it, where it's like I'm able to talk about it, but I'm completely unattached to the outcome of what actually happens. That being said, it's difficult when you're getting into sales and you're just starting to talk to people, because there's kind of this disconnect between what you think and what you feel and all this stuff. Whereas whenever you realize, like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, it becomes an integrated part of who you are. What you think and what you feel are one and the same. And so just going back to finding whatever your reasons are, but the people that you're trying to call about your product or your service, whatever it is you're doing, they're not going to be nearly as excited about it as you are. Again, it just goes back to listening, like you said, asking great questions, but making it about them and their reasons why they want to move forward, and not about you and whatever you're trying to push.
Very good, very good. Okay, let's. You've brought up ClassPass several times. What's the nuts and bolts of ClassPass? What is it? How can you use it? How do you get involved? I'll just kind of let you explain a little bit more about that, Reed.
Absolutely. So ClassPass it's about an 8-year-old company now. Like you mentioned, I handle partnerships here locally. To kind of give you an idea, I always explain ClassPass as similar to like an Airbnb for the fitness space, fitness and wellness space, I should say, especially here in Denver. So think about booking everything from a group fitness class to a massage, acupuncture, cryo, gym time or like an open gym, pool time, you name it, anything kind of under the fitness and wellness umbrella. Think about booking all of that from an app. Basically, the way that it works is, folks come in at whatever level of membership. Those dollars then convert to what we call ClassPass credits. Credits are what people use inside the actual app to purchase into these classes. On average, let's just say that you're getting some sort of like discounted rate on whatever that class is. So there's value in you utilizing ClassPass to basically help people fill those classes. And you're getting a discounted rate, but the one caveat that I want to mention about the way that from the consumer side of it is that if you don't use those credits that I mentioned before in a given month, only a small percentage of them actually will roll over into the next month, and so they expire. So, meaning that how many fitness services are out there that they want everybody to be on their subscription, and then they're going to hope and pray and count on their financials. By the way, not going to mention any names, Planet Fitness, that you're not going to show up. And whereas our model is actually the opposite of that. It's like we make money from as ClassPass, we make money when people actually are working out. We make money when fitness studios are monetizing their empty spots in classes, and that's what I go do every day. Is I go and talk to these different fitness studio owners, gyms, anybody that has classes that just aren't filling up, and really we can list those excess spots on ClassPass, and they can at least get something for it, get somebody in the door, have a full class and all of that. And because rent is going to become due either way every single month, and we all know in Denver that we have these 5 to 7 year triple net leases that can go up overnight. You're probably looking at like 29% property tax on what you're doing. It's just absurd for fitness professionals as far as like a barrier to entry, which is why obviously I'm biased towards gear sharing, and we can talk about that in a moment. How or I guess we kind of previously did, but basically it's just like. That's a big part of my why, and that kind of ties back to what we were talking about before, is like how do we help fitness studios maximize with their existing businesses and also expand outside of their walls of what they're currently doing from a revenue standpoint.
Now, how do the fitness industry in Denver is amazing, but it's completely oversaturated, right? I mean, you can walk anywhere and there's a gym, there's a little boutique studio, there's this, there's that, there's the yoga stuff all over, right? So, how would somebody that's listening to this, because again, then you I get on Instagram and there's this person fit and that person fit, this person fit, that person fit, right? Like there's all these people that are trying to start, their online fitness businesses and things like that, and I'm in that category as well. How do we, in the fitness community, how do we separate ourselves? How do we, in an already unique environment here in Denver, because I feel like everybody's trying to be unique and there's a lot of unique people and spirits and stuff like that, but how do you separate yourself within the fitness industry? How do you kind of make a dent within the fitness industry, just from your personal experience and just maybe just like what you've witnessed through being a part of other people's adventures and endeavors to try to make a dent or get into the fitness industry?
Great question, and one that everybody's asking, right? Because
right.
I mean, you could walk out this facility right here and throw a rock and hit 3 different fitness facilities.
Yep. Right upstairs, actually.
Okay,
there's a fitness area, so we don't even have to leave the building. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So point made exactly.
For sure.
Spot on. So as you mentioned, of course, the fitness space. In general, but in Denver obviously is very saturated. But the piece that I would challenge is to also remember that it's also very fragmented, meaning that there's obviously so many different types of genres that have somehow, in whatever weird fitness form, yoga and goats, man, whatever, there's so many crazy different fitness formats out there.
I love it. That's good.
But they somehow find a way to do well with it. And so what to your point is like how does that actually happen? So I think the first thing is to if you can as a fitness professional. Remember that the fitness space is fragmented. Knowing that, if you are able to carve a piece out of that community, that piece is all yours. The more that you, and this is kind of getting a little like woo woo, but like the more that you think, oh my gosh, the fitness industry is saturated. Oh my gosh, clients never call me back. Oh my gosh, this and that. The more you feed into like that story,
Yeah.
then that's what you're going to see. That's
For
what
sure.
you're going to manifest. That's what's going to happen. So to take that a step further, really to help your listeners that are asking these same questions, right? I want to take it a step further and basically just mention, like, yes, you have to niche down, know what you're about, know what your message is, 100%. I would also say that either you or whoever you partner with, you have to recognize that, you're obviously what you're doing is the experience. And again, going into experience, we're going to harp on that for a moment, but is the experience. But either you or the person that you're partnered with has to be the person that runs it like a business. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is there has to be a certain flow of how you get clients in the door. There has to be a certain means of not only giving them a badass experience, but also following up with them after the fact that's maybe a little bit more personalized than what you're just going to get from a templated email on, MindBody or whatever system that you're using. Not to say that those can't be great, but you know what I mean. Just that personal touch as far as follow-up goes. But also, and to take that a step further, it's like, running things by the numbers. And I mean that, again, yes, from those folks that are coming in the door, people that come in your CRM. So if you guys aren't using a client management software system, you definitely should. Just some way of like keeping track of everybody that comes in. Definitely dive into how you're following up with those folks and realizing like who's slipping through the cracks and things like that. So know your numbers on that end, but also know your numbers when it comes to like getting into the business. Like I said, as I'm traveling around with class passes, like I see a lot of gyms that went out of business. I see a lot of places that are done. Even like bigger brands, because one thing that you have to really take into consideration is that real estate is probably, if not the biggest, one of the biggest line items in your business when it comes to expenses. And so finding a cool location, yeah, that's great, but also considering like how many members, monthly reoccurring direct members, do I need to have every single month in order to actually maintain my business and actually have a margin after I paid that expense. So this is getting a little bit in the weeds, but I just want to harp on that because everybody's model is a little bit different. And so when it comes to like certain fitness franchises, for example, one that specializes in personal training, doing X amount per session, I need, I don't know, 150 people, 75 people, or 100 people in order for me to be profitable every single month. Whereas if you're more of a group class setup, and obviously that price point per person is a little bit less, it's like, you need maybe 250 people, but they're all paying a little bit less or whatever it might be. So just know those numbers, work it backwards. Don't take the real estate question lightly. If you can find a way to manage your overhead by maybe being in the same space, a shared space with other people, or find a way to really push out your founding membership if you're just getting going in a way that you know that you can maintain. So that's a long way of saying basically know your numbers and really have a good grasp on what you're getting into.
Okay, awesome. We're gonna head towards the finish line, Reed. A few more things I just want to quickly touch on. I'm going to ask you one question. It's going to probably be a little bit more in depth, and then we're just going to do some quick hitters, and then we'll wrap things up. What is one thing for you personally that you are really focusing on in your own life in terms of maybe it's something, it's like a goal, maybe it's a challenge, maybe it's something that you've kind of recognized like, hey man, like I need to get better in this area. What's something that you're really focusing on, working on, overcoming, breaking through, kind of however you want to take that, but just personally, what's that main focus in your life right now?
Absolutely, and this is actually going to tie very, very well with everything that we're talking about. It's one thing for me to sit here and say all those things about knowing your numbers, but holding yourself accountable and moving in the direction of is an entirely other thing. So for me right now, it's like with gear sharing, Like I mentioned, we're working with a real estate group. I'm focused on just making a V line for placing these boxes out there, because I know the more of a network we have of these boxes out there, the easier it is for people to say, oh yeah, I subscribe to that, and go be at a retreat center, go be at a co-working space, go be at an apartment building, go be somewhere, do a really cool pop-up event. And so to bring that back in full circle, it's like all the time, as my kind of goals and focus shift within the business that I'm doing, it's like I'm now thinking about, okay, how can I contact X amount of locations every single day? And this is in conjunction with ClassPass. So ClassPass is, obviously what I'm doing a lot of the time, and so it's like I have a certain number of phone calls or touch points I'm trying to hit with that, and then it shifts into like, okay, I'm trying to focus on venue locations. I'm also trying to focus on how many fitness professionals I come into contact with, and I'm keeping numbers of all those things. If you don't have a planner, by the way, I definitely recommend, super nerdy, I know, but I definitely recommend having a planner, because if it's not in your calendar, it doesn't exist. It'll fall off the end of your to-do list. Yep. So put it in there. So I have certain numbers that I look at every day, and I fail often, man. I fail often, but like I at least know and have like a visual of like what I'm brushing up against every day.
Mm-hmm. Cool, perfect. Okay, so just a few quick hitters here. Do you have a favorite fitness spot in the Denver area? And what I mean by that, those of us that live out here, Red Rocks is usually one that's brought up, but let's set Red Rocks to the side, because most people that are going to be listening to this are probably in the Denver area. They know about that. But is there a favorite fitness spot in the Denver area maybe that is lesser known than Red Rocks? For you personally, that you really enjoy.
Do you mean more like a boutique style fitness?
No, I'm thinking, and thank you for clarifying. I'm thinking more of maybe something outside, kind of like a Red Rocks. Is there maybe like a mountain that you enjoy going to, or a trailhead or something like that?
For sure. So I've honestly been so focused with what I'm doing on the parks here. Mm-hmm. So I love there's a couple of parks that I'll throw pop-ups in fairly regularly. I was so focused on what brand I suppose like I like to drop into from that perspective. But we're just looking at like a venue location. As far as if you're going to be outside and you're going to be in nature, I love Cheeseman Park. I love Sloan's Lake. We've had a box over, not very far from where we're at right now. Mm-hmm. We've had a box during like the warm seasons, right off set from Sloan's Lake to access. And so I love spots like that, because it's like if you can have a mountain view, you can run around it. There's just a lot you can do there for sure.
Cool. All right, is there a favorite Colorado destination? Is there a place in the state that you appreciate or enjoy visiting every once in a while?
The main place I've visited, I'd say even since I've been here, I have some family down in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. Oh, okay. Which is not, one of the typical answers. Or anything.
I've never even heard of it.
Exactly. So. It's like almost northern New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I love it is because it's just so far away from like everything else,
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4 words, and I just want you to give me the first word, or the kind of the first thought about the word I give you that pops up in your mind, okay? So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 words. I'm just going to say the word, whatever kind of pops up initially in your mind, I just want you to share that, okay? So the first word, fitness.
Experiences.
Passion.
Purpose.
Progress.
Happiness.
Human connection.
Authentic.
Perfect. Okay, so the last question, Reed, that I have for you, what do you want to be remembered for?
One word answer.
No. This one's okay. Outside of the one word. Okay. This is just kind of like the wrap up question, so you can expound as much as you'd like on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the question there. Mm-hmm. I would say that if there's kind of an overarching thing that this would be great if I was remembered for, is just contribution overall. Mm-hmm. And that can obviously take many different forms. And so what I mean by that is there's a really great David Henry Thoreau quote. It's like it's not enough just to be good, but to be good for something.
Powerful.
And I think that it's important to not just focus on what like just moving through the daily motions, but also to consider ultimately like how can I make myself useful in this world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of problems out there. Like you don't have
Right.
to go far to find a lot of problems outside of your
For
door.
sure.
It doesn't have to be in the fitness space, just one that we all love and appreciate and everything. But yeah, to bring that full circle, to make contribution in the sense of like how can I make myself useful.
Okay, so Reed, if somebody has resonated with your story on some level at some point, if somebody would like to find out more about gear sharing, if somebody would like to find out more about ClassPass and kind of everything that you've got going on within the fitness community here locally in Denver, where can people find out more about, again, gear sharing, ClassPass, and then if somebody would like to reach out to you personally on social media, things like that, where can people go to find you on the internet?
Absolutely. So Instagram is, I would say, the best at gear sharing. So that's at and then gear, obviously sharing, SHARING. If you click on my profile, you'll see there's a link in the description that I actually link you up with anything that I'm about. It'll say I'm basically a liaison between brand and venue space. And so if you're listening out here and I can help facilitate whether you're looking for a permanent space, space to do a pop-up, whatever it might be. Would love to serve you in some sort of way. But basically everything you'll find about me, what I'm up to with gear sharing and ClassPass, you can click into that link and there's a place to actually book a call. And so if you're out there and you're curious about what you can do to expand outside of your walls, or you're looking to basically just help maximize what you're currently doing, we'd love the opportunity to serve you either way and at least have the conversation.
Cool. All right, so Reed, I just want to thank you for taking time out of your full schedule. I know we've gone back and forth. There was a previous guest that introduced us. I don't know, it's probably been month and a half ago, and we were going back and forth on Instagram. We finally made it happen. So thank you for taking time out of your full schedule to come on here to the podcast, for sharing your story, kind of sharing some of your fitness insights. Like I mentioned earlier, you're very well spoken, and I do greatly appreciate the time with you this afternoon.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on.
For sure. So 127 Fit Podcast listeners, once again, I just want to thank you for your listening ears. They're always greatly appreciated. If you'd like to find out more about the guests that I'm bringing onto the podcast, or if you would like to find out more about myself personally, you can find that information on Instagram at 127fit. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. LinkedIn is at Quentin Vars. If you guys would do me a huge favor and please leave me a 5-star rating and written review, and also subscribe to the podcast, that would be cool, especially within the iTunes Apple Podcast app. Again, that's how more people find the podcast, more people listen, and more people are positively impacted. That's the name of the game for the 127 Fit Podcast. If you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance you think would be a great guest or guest for the 127 Fit Podcast, please just send me an email or give this email out. The email is 127fit@gmail.com. And as you guys are finding great value in a specific episode or episodes of the 127 Fit Podcast, in which I know you are, please take that specific episode or episodes you're finding that great value in and share it on your Facebook and Instagram stories using the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. And per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, "If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small." This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.